like this today.
I've got an old one just like it old.
Oh,
That house, I didn't know you needed one.
I didn't either.
They're on the shore,
I didn't know it either.
loaned it to you.
Well, this one here will go down, but it's better than it's up.
Yeah.
And I got a new best friend, and I didn't even know it.
Oh,
How's everybody?
oh, I really don't know.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Kind of been separated already,
Mm.
doing different things.
I've been crazy too. Can't help it. Mm. God, I made it.
Sorry.
Thank God I made it. Feeling better?
Soon as I get rested, I will.
Is there such thing?
Hmm?
Is there such thing? Rested.
Just walking a little distance over here, just wearing me out. Can't hardly catch my breath.
Wore me out too. I'm sorry I look so rough. I can't help it. Clock tick like mine. Tick, tick.
Sorry.
Clock ticking.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but it ticks just like mine. I'll tell you what happened after a while.
Sorry.
I'll tell you what happened after a while.
All right. Ain't good.
They'll never get old.
No, I don't. I don't recommend it too much.
It's that golf course, no?
Doesn't have a whole lot going for it.
It's still there. It's gonna rain tomorrow, they say.
What?
Rain. I think that's a light cloud.
You'll have to forgive me, I'm
That's okay.
going deaf too.
That's okay.
That might be it tonight.
Someone's coming. I'm not too sure. Maybe. Dr. Holloway's not coming?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was up and getting ready to
that's
rock 'em all.
Hey,
hello.
how's everybody? How are you? I don't know how you.
We're here.
I'm not sure.
I got a new
Right.
best friend.
Oh, is that messed up your legs out there?
I know you.
That bike?
Hi, hi, hi.
Hey,
Shalom.
Hey.
Oh, good to
Shalom.
see you. There's Kim.
Hey, Mary, been missing you.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
I have to tell you after a while when you know everything. What's the matter?
Okay.
What is it I'm about to do?
How's Dawn doing?
Procedure went, well, we don't know yet. Thought it went pretty well, but she's breathing in, so, I don't really know.
I don't want to hear my news then.
We got up at 3 yesterday, got her down there. Got ready, both of us got showers, got there at 6. And she had her procedure, and well, he was late, which kind of ticked me off because I was up there at 6. So about he had to talk to his residents, and anyhow, they had told me that before I got up at 3. But she had it, and it hurt all day yesterday. And then on the way home, we stopped by a cooler to get gas. He was out at Tresiba, and so we got there. And I got my flu shot, and I got my Moderna booster shot. So I had pretend COVID all night long. You know, because they give you pretend COVID, I guess, you know, because your body acts like it's sick. So I didn't have a fever, but I acted like I had a fever,
Yeah.
you know, and I wasn't tired, but I was tired, you know, I was exhausted. But then I worked today and she was home and she said she was bleeding again, so maybe it'll stop, I don't know. Cauterized what was left, he thought he got it, but I don't know. He did or not, no. So, it's just, I don't know really what to do now. I hope it worked and it's just a leftover, but again, we still don't know. So. But she's still hurting right now. It looks like she got a campfire in her tongue. How are y'all?
We're hanging in there.
And I got my Georgia cough again this time of year.
You start taking your zinc?
No, I didn't, because I forgot all about it.
Okay, because I'm not gonna feel sorry for you.
I need to. It just seems like every time we go, you know, it's one of those things. When you're there, you don't remember, and when you're home, you do. You know, you get stuff.
You have a Sam's card?
Yeah.
Just go to Sam's, it's the cheapest place I found, and get one of those
Uh,
huge bottles. I gotta go back tomorrow. You want me to buy you a bottle?
yeah. Because I'll forget it again.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember because I'm down before. I took my last quarter there. It's like, oh, time to go to Sam's.
we um, weekend. I don't know what we're doing this weekend. Dawn wanted to kind of have a. She's got to go a week from tomorrow. Well, a week from today. She's going to Atlanta for 2 days. They're going to decide whether they're going to do surgery on her hernia or not. And so, she wanted to kind of have a Thanksgiving in case she was in the hospital for Thanksgiving. But Taylor can't come. She's going to be somewhere else, and I don't know if she's supposed to like doing anything. So, and today is Cameron's birthday. He's going to be the big O6. Let's see, did anything happen at school? I don't think it did. I was asking if anything happened. We had a meeting with the superintendent because he wants us to vote for the East Lost that's coming out of Bryan County. I did not know this, but Bryan County is the fastest growing county in the state of Georgia. And in the nation, Bryan County is number 6 of all the counties in the nation.
That's probably down in Richmond Hill.
There's a
Isn't it?
lot of things that
It was, and now it's here.
Oh,
before side.
Yeah, and then the governor was here about, 6 months ago? And gave a whole bunch of money from the state to develop this place out here on this exit, this business center. And that could bring about 10 to 15,000 jobs. to this-
huge,
And, yeah,
huge.
but what we had was big.
Yeah.
And then there's that,
But kind of undeveloped, but this other's supposed to be pretty quick.
yeah, and what we had before, the Bryan County Development Authority, out here at Ellaville before is huge. And they're just starting to build businesses out there. Plus we have, nearby, it's not really in the county, but Daniel Defense but Daniel Defense is here. Nine Line and Oracle,
Yeah, Daniel Fish is in Bryan County.
yeah, it's here. And
Yeah, it's,
we got a lot of people from here working there, and nobody wants to live in Savannah, so they move over here.
can't blame them there. I don't know where this road.
Well, I wouldn't mind living in parts of Savannah, but if I had kids in school, and I'm not telling anything nobody knows. Elementary school, okay, but middle and high school, especially high school, is dangerous. I wouldn't want to have, I've got kids that come from there. Their parents rent something really quick to live out here, you know, or have an address out here, I'm sure what it is. So their kids can go to school out here, because it's awful. And Richmond Hill's not as bad, and our Richmond Hill's worse, because they're just finishing, so we have problems in Bryan County because we are the only county in the nation that is completely bisected by a military reservation. So you can't get there from here. So we have to have 2 of everything. And they're just now finishing a new high school in Richmond Hill. And it'll probably be over full when they get it built.
There's a lot of military in Richmond Hill.
Yeah. And there's a lot of everything else there. There's a lot of Savannah in Richmond Hill.
That used to be the escape, because I lived there for like 15 years. Got out of Savannah Blue, Richmond Hill. You know, the housing was cheaper.
Uh-huh.
The schools at one time down there were really good, but I don't know what they are now.
They are. They're fantastic. I mean, I teach the teachers, I work with teachers on there. And they flat are, I mean, it's not perfect anywhere. But around here, if I had a child in high school, it would be either the Bryan County schools, either the Effingham High School. It used to be Southeast Florida. I think I still wouldn't mind get kids on something. The Statesboro High, no way. They're having the same trouble that like Savannah High and Groves are having.
Pre-criminal.
They had a really good school and really safe school up here, New Hampstead High School. But every time they get problems, they would go out of that school and it's another problem. So now they ship a lot of problems to New Hampstead.
But don't they have alternative schools too, or don't they?
They do, but it's a legal effort to get them in. And when you make exceptions, you gotta make up for everybody, and that's what they've done traditionally for years. The Savannah School Board is dog to dog. And they'll make exceptions for people, and then, well, if you made an exception for theirs, you gotta make an exception for mine, and it's a legal battle constantly. They try their best. I know those teachers down there, but they begin and end the year with about 1,500 vacancies every year. They can't hire them. All right, Barry, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Sure. Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to come here to worship. We ask you to bless us, folks that are here, bless this congregation that they strive here. We ask this all in the holy and devout name. Amen.
Amen. Now, Jesus is angry in Matthew 12. He's upset, and the reason he's angry is, and I know how this is. I mean, I've had a class, it started today, and you have these students in class that doesn't matter what is said, they want to be the one to talk, whether they know the answer or not. But they want to be the one to talk. They don't want anybody else to talk. And, you can't, no, I've got to be right. I've got to be right. I've got to be right. And I put a stop to it today. All I did was kick them off so they would pouted and sat down because it was quiet. And the rest of the kids had to learn. And you always have that kind of thing. Jesus had that in spades with this. The Pharisees really didn't want to see what the truth was, and they didn't want to hear what he said. What they wanted was to disrupt. And that was it. Oh, well, you can't do this. Well, you can't do that. You can't do the other. Yeah.
No, it just came to me a little taste. They already had their little parameters already set up. They're making money.
Yeah.
It's like me coming in here being a stranger and saying, well, I don't think Joe's doing this right, or Charlie, or, Joe can't sing tune, but God bless him. I love him. I love hearing him sing. But you know what I mean? Just
yeah. It's actually happened. That's actually happened here before. There was a guy that we tapped here. In fact, it's happened a couple times, but I can remember this one. There was a guy that his only purpose here was to disrupt.
This is something from my own personal experience. I love my sister to death, but she was going through a church. I was living out west of there, where they would do this thing where they called it holy hands, and sometimes they would lift their hands up. And there was another church like this, just smaller, just 5 minutes down the road. And I asked her, I said, Linda, if that bothers you so much, why are you there? Because they're not going to change. What do you mean? Well, it just aggravates me when they do this. And she said, I said, what about the little church down the road? Oh, well, they're real nice people down there. They're more like, there you go. They're more like you. They're more conservative. Same Bible, different preacher, just a little more conservative.
Don't lift their hands up.
Yeah, they don't lift their hands up. I said, that won't aggravate you. It's like arguing about the color of the carpet.
Yeah, which we didn't do. Yeah. But
I'm sorry, I missed that argument about the carpet.
Well, it needed to be replaced.
Oh, I get that, but I mean, my thing is, it's like my job, they want to, what mom said, they want to swallow an elephant, strain a net.
Uh-huh.
I had a guy slept all night last night. This other nurse comes in, she don't work on the floor. Oh, I can't breathe. I've just sat here all night and I can't breathe. I'm like, sound like you're breathing all right. You're talking.
Uh-huh.
And she said something to me like, well, you could have done something. I did. I watched him sleep all night. I said, him and about 29 other patients.
Mhm.
That's what I did last night. I watched them all sleep.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, if you did, then if he did sleep, he accomplished a miracle, because Donna can't sleep a bit in the hospital. But it has to just have, you know, eat a drug that you can't have, she just can't sleep. You know.
Oh no, I've got my watch set by my drug addicts. No, I'm not being funny.
Yeah.
I know every 6 hours, every 4 hours.
Mhm.
Oh, 7:30, I'm gonna get up and start walking down that way because I know they're gonna be on the bell.
Uh-huh.
Is it time for my oxycodone? Yeah, that's why I'm standing here.
Mhm.
Well, how'd you know? I don't know. Just figured it out. Just figured your little pain pattern out. Every 4 hours, you want a drug pill.
She can't sleep in the hospital. What I'm trying to say is this. There are people in this life, and it bothers me in church work, it bothers me in school, it bothers me in just about any walk of life. These people do not want Jesus to teach. They want to be right. They want to take over. They want to, you know, no, can't have that. No, can't have that. No, can't. I mean, it's just over and over and over. I've met preachers like this who try to teach a Bible class, or luckily when they teach sermons. And this is why preachers, when they preach sermons, this is why that they kind of, and this is wrong too, but this is kind of why they get vindictive and start calling out people in their sermons, even though without their names. But you got to figure, if you give him 30 minutes of uninterrupted speech, you know, maybe he could settle something then, because he couldn't talk before. You wouldn't let him. You know, well, I don't agree. Or, you know, well, and all this kind of stuff. We had a lady here that went to church one time, and she didn't like anything I had to say. What she wanted to talk about was hunting, and how men shouldn't be hunting, and the problems that, because her husband did it, and she didn't like it, and she didn't like anybody else doing it either. I'm not a real big hunter, and don't really advocate it, but I don't, there's nothing in the Bible about it, I don't want to talk about it.
Did you ever study history?
Well, yeah.
We
you
come
know,
from a
and
hunter-gatherer society. I mean, you know, we.
She didn't like her husband doing it. And,
Well, why'd she marry
he
him?
did it a lot, and I guess it was okay when they first got married, but anyway, she left here, and that was it. I mean, and it was all, and nothing that, no subject would start talking about the Bible that she drifted right off the hunting. And it's, and then another guy, no, Joe, that's not right. No, that's not right. Yeah, it really is. Well, I just don't think it is. Okay, well, you don't think it is. Be quiet about it, okay? You know, is what I'm going to tell him. Roland was telling me he has the same trouble, you know, in France, you know, from a different thing. After a while, you know, I've learned a few tricks to stop it all, but I shouldn't have to. You know, usually when somebody does, I just sit here and listen, and I said, no, that's not right. Now move on. You know, and if they don't like that and they get upset, they leave, and that's all for them.
I look interesting. Smile and look at it like I've really taken it all in.
Mm-hmm.
I call it going to my happy place.
Well, I listen to him, because then I say, well, that can't be right because. And you're making the scriptures contradict itself because. I said, you might want to, you know, just listen to what's going on before you comment on it. And really, that's all it takes. Kids at school are much easier, so I don't have to worry about hurting their feelings. The kids say, all of a sudden, they'll pop off with a question and say, I told you all about that yesterday. What? I said, didn't I tell you all about that yesterday? No, you never said a word about it. I said, oh, then I must not thought it was any of your business. And I go on. That I don't have to worry so much about hurting their feelings there. They hear, you kind of don't worry about it. But. And then Jesus finally gets to teach. But then it looks like there's still people there. But you see, chapter 13. On that day, Jesus had gone out of the house and was sitting by the sea. And large crowds gathered to him, so they got into a boat and sat down. The whole crowd was standing on the beach. It looks like they're crowding him, because there's so many people there. And he told them many things in parables, saying, Behold, the sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Others fell in the rocky places where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up immediately because they had no depth of soil. But after the sun rose, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Others fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out. But others fell on the good soil and yielded a crop, some 100, some 60, and some 30 times as much. The one who has ears, let him hear. All right, not a bad story. And in fact, I've heard it all my life because this is a really good Sunday school story. Sunday school teachers hit it all the time. And not only do they hit it, they kind of act it out. You know, they let kids grow seeds and milk jugs and stuff like that. But if you think about it for just a minute, I know people like every one of these things. This absolutely puts the problem that evangelism has just in perfect, in every day. I mean, in all kinds of ways. It absolutely puts the problem that you have with evangelism or teaching. I'll tell you, teaching anything in the world today. Jesus did it. I mean, very, very quickly. It would have probably taken years of college for people to figure this out. Otherwise, if he hadn't said it. And now, before we go on to everything that bad happens, some seeds fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Well, this is when the teaching happens, but it doesn't take root at all. You know, they knew what this is like. Farmers know what this is like too. This reminds me of what we used to call the turn row. The turn row is seeds fall there, they never grow because the soil is so packed down because you turn the tractor there so many times. In their case, the turn row would be the horses or oxen have walked there so many times that it's packed down. It's not, and the birds come and eat the soil. You expect that. You eat seeds. You expect that. And this happens in religion as well, or anything you teach. Sometimes it ain't happening. In school, I was teaching today, and the same girl, I was teaching with Nearpod about, actually we're talking about Muslims right now, and how they split, and how it led into the Crusades, and the difference between the Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians. And so we were going through this, and I said, there's no way you could hear what I'm saying. Oh, I am. I'm listening. I said, well, I'm teaching with Nearpod. You should be looking at your screen. Get up. This is not your bed. This is not time to sleep. Get up. They pay me far too much to be here with you. You're not going to sleep during class. I said, I'm exhausted and I'm not sleeping. Yes, sir. And so she listened the rest of the time. I don't know if she worked or not later on. I didn't look, but this happens. I mean, there was a young man that failed the last test. He said, I just didn't know anything. I said, I'd be very surprised if you did because you slept most days you were in here. You didn't listen. Well, you know, I had this going on at home. I said, I don't care. I said, I don't care anything about this. I don't care how late you stayed up. I don't care what's going on at home. You have a job in here that you didn't do. And what kind of a teacher would I be if you could sleep through class and still pass?
A good one.
You know, you don't even have to show up. I can just phone it in.
A friend of mine, who was a policeman in college, had a professor. He said, how many I have in here are policemen and firemen? And he said, a couple of us, he said, raise their hand, and we got there. It was like, y'all gonna make A's. And he said, I made an A. The professor, who was like, he used to be a policeman, you know.
Still, it's not right.
I mean, yeah, but it's just funny to me. I said, really? And he said, yeah. And he said, the easiest class I took in college.
Now here, and I've known verse 5 people so many times. Others fell on the rocky places where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up immediately because they had no depth of soil. I don't know what to do about this. I have seen it over and over and over, and I've seen it so many times that I can just about tell it when it's happening. And I don't think too many other people can, because somebody will come and they'll be baptized, and then all of a sudden they're doing everything. And all of a sudden they disappear. you know, a story about the Apostle Paul that we miss is that we assume that Saul of Tarsus went on his way to Damascus, became a Christian, and then ran right out and started traveling the world preaching the gospel. He didn't. And I think I know the order this came in. He goes back to Jerusalem, and he lives with Peter, the Apostle Peter, for 2 years.
Didn't he go to Arabia too?
And then, we don't know how long, he spent some time in Arabia, which in those days could be anywhere in the Arabian Peninsula. But he goes to Arabia, and that's where Barnabas has to go and send for him before the first missionary journey, and has to go and speak up for him. So the Apostle Paul, when he became a Christian, he had a doctor's of level worth of law inside him from the Old Testament. He knew it. But he spent, I'm going to say, at least 2 years, and probably at least 3, and probably more, in preparation. Yeah. And honestly, I wish when I first started doing this that I had spent, after college, I had spent 3 to 4, maybe even 5 years in a church watching a master preacher, evangelist, minister at work before just getting kicked out and said, do it on your own. I had to learn most of my stuff by trial and error that I've learned. And it didn't go well. I honestly quit. I wasn't ever going to do it again. Because all of a sudden you're making this happen to our young men that are going to be preachers. You're just throwing them out there, and then they've all of a sudden got to be leading, and they're not ready.
So in other words, sink or swim.
Yeah. And I sang. And I gave up on it. And then I started watching, and I started learning. And I thought, this is what I did. And it took me a while because I was arrogant. This is what I did wrong.
Well, let me tell you a story. Mom can back me up on this. I had a teacher one time, she said her mentor or her, I forgot, what do they call them, Mom? We go to the hospital, they call them something now, like a mentor.
Yeah.
She said it was just mean and ugly and nasty to her because she was a brand new nurse.
Uh-huh.
She said 10 years later, she ends up in the emergency room, and she said, lo and behold, who have I got?
Uh-huh.
The same nasty, ugly teacher.
Uh-huh.
And she said, she's like, well, I should have taught you better. She said, you think? Because I mean, you were just mean. I had a teacher in school, she basically made me and another guy like miserable because she didn't think there's some female nurse. And she come out and said she was going to make me. She did.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, no, I was determined. But my thing is, don't say stuff or do stuff because you might, 10 years from now, it's like, oh my God, there's that student I just harassed. And now he's my nurse or she's my nurse.
It happens so many times.
Yeah, it's
in
called
church.
karma.
And, well, that actually is the next one, but they spring up. They do everything, and all of a sudden you don't see them anymore. And my opinion is, and I think the Bible bears me out, you should be the sincere milk of the word, and you have meat of salt. But you got to prepare, you got to listen, you got to watch. You've got to hear, but you got to watch and see what happens, see how people, and you've got to look critically about your older Christians because, after all, some of them never progress. You've got to look who is, and I try to point this out, you need to look at congregations and see who the real leaders are and see why people follow those people, and that's what you want to be. Because honestly, I've been to several congregations where the real leaders do not have their names in the bulletin.
Pretty much.
The real leaders, the preacher, the assistant preachers, the elders, and the deacons have nothing to do with leading that congregation. The congregation has handed those out. They've handed out preachers because they seem to be kind of nice. And they've I asked guys to be elders, deacons, who they felt they kind of had to because they've been going there long enough. You know, it's an honorary job. But the real leaders, you look down, like Jesus said to, and see who's serving the most and who's following them. But what happens when we just jump in too quick? Same thing happens in every other thing. If you just jump in too quick, but the sun rose, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. The sun rose, they had no root or water, so they withered away. Olin taught me this when he was here. Olin was really big on yard work. You know when he would sprig grass when it started getting cold? I said, Olin, it's cold. It's not going to grow. He said, Joe, it is. It's going to grow. And he had a way of doing it. He would he would dig up like this much grass in a place and take a little bit out. He would take his axe, which you never do this with an axe, but he did it, and hit the ground with it. He would put some under the ground where the roots kind of were, and then he would smash it with his foot together. I said, Olin, it's going to be cold. He said, it's not going to be green. I know. But all during the wintertime, while it's not growing on top, it's going to be establishing roots all under the ground. And you know, dang it. And about 90% of the time, he was right. You would see this centipede grass we have slowly start growing. And just the reason it's all over here and all next door over here, all I had to do was on the other side of my fence, just mow kind of real short, down on a two, down two height. And the second time I mowed, it was covered in centipede grass. Because it runs like that, because it grows throughout the winter. The same thing is true about a lot of stuff. You may not think that you're getting through it, but after a while what makes me happy is after a while, I start hearing the things I say coming back from people here, because they listened and tried it out and it worked. Unfortunately, people say, I want to be a leader right now. You can't. You need to progress, but you gotta speak, you gotta crawl before you can walk, and you gotta walk before you can run. And you gotta run before you can fly. And it takes a while. It takes some time. And I can see people many times doing this and just thinking, please don't, please slow down. Please prepare. There's a preacher that said, somebody asked him, what would you do if you found out you had 5 years left to preach the gospel? He said, I'd spent 3 of them preparing. That's not what people would usually say. I hit the ground running. All right, look at this one. It's a story about your mentor. Verse 7. Others fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out. I hate that verse being there, that it's true. Because in the church, unfortunately, we grow a lot of thorns. Well, I don't like it when people hold their hands.
It didn't bother me.
I don't care one way or the other. I'm just happy they're there. That's me, though. If they want to throw up your hand, and I don't care. It doesn't make, we've had them do it here before. There was a lady that used to come here from time to time because her daughter married a soldier, and so she would visit. And she was from one of those ultra-conservative churches that are even more conservative than most. And she would put a scarf on her head. Were you here when she would be here on Sunday night, and as soon as we started worship, she put that scarf on her head.
Had to cover her head.
Cover her head. And so people here asked, and people here were really good about it. They noticed it, and then after, when she was gone, they kind of asked her, I told them why she did it. They said, why don't we do it? I said, because it's not necessary. Oh, okay. What do we do about her? We just let her alone. We're not going to get up and snatch it off her head and tell her she's wrong. Let her alone. People will grow at their own rate. I'm not going to preach a sermon how she's going to hell for putting that thing on her head. Let her do it. It's not gonna make any difference whatsoever. I've known ladies that come to church and they were raised pretty conservative, so they wear dresses. Don't care. I mean, there was a young lady that played at ECI, played basketball, and she was a part of one of those churches that women should not ever wear pants. So everybody else wore shorts on their basketball. She had a little skirt. You couldn't hardly tell. I said, finally somebody pointed out to me, I said, oh, okay, but she had a basketball uniform with a skirt instead of a pants. And she was one of the best players they had. But I didn't care, that didn't make any difference to me. The thing is, and this is what I've tried to get over here and everywhere else, if they're coming, leave them alone. Don't try to improve them. Don't try to fix them. They'll fix themselves. You're not going to change anyone. They have to change themselves. It's not going to work. You can't force anybody to change, and if you do, they're not gonna really change. They're just gonna try to tell you to change. For real transference, conversion to take place, people have to change themselves. They're not going to change. I learned this in an odd place. When I first walked into the church, I was scared because I walked in as a full-time minister after I already said I'd never do it again. It had gone so bad the first time. Something, I did a pretty decent job.
That's what I said about my marriage.
I was 4 years there and they begged me to stay. Well, we had nothing but problems a lot of times, and really we shouldn't have had anything but problems. I learned a lot from that first failed experience. Now, I didn't do everything right all the time, I promise you. However, I listened. Folks, this is in the border states. This is southeast Kentucky, Old Hatfield, McCoy area. This is the hillbilly place. You know what happens in the border states in Churches of Christ? The sign you put on your building doesn't always say what you are. It could say Church of Christ. It could say Disciples of Christ. It could say Christian Church. Most of the time, it said Church of Christ. However, many churches of Christ that you went into had instruments inside them. They were part of the National Christian Church Association. One of my best friends, when I had there, was a minister of the Elkhorn City Church of Christ. They had a clarion, an organ, and a piano, but they got mad when some kid brought a trumpet. Which I thought, of all three instruments they had already, the trumpet was the only thing that's actually mentioned in the Bible. But I pointed that out to them when they asked me about it one time, and they looked at me like I didn't have any sense. But
No hearts, no cymbals.
no, they didn't have any of that. But they got a kid from a college after services they were singing, and this kid whipped out a trumpet about Judgment Day. And I thought, well, if you're going to have instruments music, that's when to have it.
Yeah.
Because that's actually mentioned. And, but they just had, it was just what they were used to. And Tim and I talked about it, but we didn't get anywhere. But the thing is, we also had a choir, where I was, with great difficulty. We got rid of it, everybody sang. The thing is, what I'm trying to tell you is this. That was the perfect place. I mean, I thought about writing a book one time, but I didn't want people to read it and think I was insulting them. But everything I learned about being a preacher, I learned at Little Beaver, because that's what the place was called, Little Beaver Church of Christ. We didn't live on Big Beaver Creek, we lived on Little Beaver Creek. So I wanted to say that my beginning as a minister began on Little Beaver. Folks, we had some very, very strong personalities about both sides. One guy got so mad at me one time at a Bible study, not in a church building, but in his home. He had to walk out. And the thing is, and I had to get up and go outside and say, look, Brother Burgess. His name was Burgess, had a big old mountain name. I didn't mean to hurt his feelings. He said, Joe, it's my fault. I just have bad nerves. I said, I'm never going to agree with you about that. He said, yeah, I'm never going to agree with you, but I can handle it better. I said, yeah, you could, and so could I. He said, Joe, I don't hate you, and I preached his funeral. I was first in one to preach his funeral.
Well, so we got that for him, dude.
Well, you know, he was he was at one time an elder in the church there. He was far too sick, and his wife had passed away. His kids and I became friends. In fact, one of his daughters married the judge in Pike County. They went to the 3rd Street Church of Christ in Pikeville, but they attended Little Beaver when they were in town. And of course, they knew we didn't have instruments and music. They wanted them. 3rd Street did have them. So the two of them, Judge and Miss Ellswick, said, Joe, I've got something I want you to think about. I don't want to answer right now. I said, okay. Said, would you, one Sunday evening, come and preach at 3rd Street? And they told me all about it. They had instruments and music, and they didn't tell me everything. They didn't tell me all about it.
You have a trumpet?
I said, no.
No.
Well,
I can't come.
In a way, yes. So I thought about it. I didn't talk to anybody about it 'cause I knew what most of the congregation would say. And so I called them and said, yeah, I'll be there. They said, what are you going to preach? I said, you can't ask me that. If you want me to come, I'll preach whatever I want to preach. They said, okay. They talked to the preacher, and the preacher said, send him on. So somebody, my assistant preacher, preached in my stead that Sunday night. I drove to Pikeville and I preached. I preached a sermon on building bridges and not building walls. The one you basically heard not too long ago. And I wanted to build something, but I don't know if it ever did, but I wanted to try to build a dialogue between those people. But now, they didn't tell me they had, because they did not have a choir. They had instruments and music, and they had stuff. But they also had a soloist. And he had a remote control, and they had the karaoke version of some of their hymns. And so he had the accompaniment, and he sang, with it. And so I get back, and the brethren said, what did you do? I said, well, I don't want to be judged, because I don't know if what I did was right. I did with what I had at the beginning, and so you don't have to go off and tell people I did something wrong. Okay. Said, when he sang a solo, did you know the song? I said, yeah, it's an old song. What'd you do? I said, I sang along with it. And I went to the place in my book where I was supposed to sing every time I sang. I'm not going to sit there and make a big deal about that. And I preached a sermon on building bridges and not walls between us. And I guess if I'd stayed, we might have developed into a relationship. And to be honest with you, they might have changed. But more importantly, I think we might have changed, because I've always kind of felt that we treat the instrument issue correctly, the Bible, but I think our attitude about it is a little bit too harsh.
But don't you think, I'm going out on a tangent here, that sometimes people come to church to be entertained?
They do.
I'm not saying that not everybody, but I mean, some people might just say, I can't sing, I love to hear the choir. I've heard people say, I wish I could sing like Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, but my voice is.
I believe that, and I believe it's just as wrong too, because of our singing, not to sing in our congregation as it is to sing with an instrument. But I think our view of it, okay, do I believe that it's wrong? I believe the Bible clearly teaches that it's wrong to do in worship. However, do I believe it's the worst thing somebody can do? No. But that's me. That's not God, of course.
I mean, I was in a church, and with church praise, but these 3 ladies sang, and it sounded like the minuet from Mozart. I mean, they had incredibly beautiful voices, and they, like you said, they did a solo, and it was very beautiful. They did
I'm not sure it's entertaining. I do see, and I was actually talking about this today with one of my assistant principals, that I don't know how to pronounce his name yet, but Hudasakis is Greek. He and I were talking, and he was talking about church, and I talked about the difference between us and the Christian church. You've been to the Christian church. So, well, he said, I don't know what your view of God is, but my guy, he doesn't give up something without instrument or music. I said, well, the thing is, it's not your guy. You're his guy. You know, what I've noticed about it, I can see the wisdom of God in not having it. Because, first of all, if you had to have it, you couldn't have church services in a lot of places. Worship services are designed by nature in the New Testament to be simple, easily done. The mechanics of them, now it's not easy to worship, but the mechanics, the physical, worldly things, aspects of worship can be done anywhere in the world. And if you just leave it there, plus I've noticed what you said is I like to listen to that farm stuff. What I've noticed is there's not, and maybe, and I don't want to make a wide sweeping condemnation of this. Maybe the problem is that when we're worshiping with mechanical instruments of worship, we're not worshiping because our focus is on the person playing the instrument, really. I mean, they're doing something that we can't do, and we're listening to that.
So it kind of elevates it
It's
to a higher level.
It's a different singing that takes place. Now, it doesn't bother me so much to sing along with it, but I'm not sure how much I'm worshiping when I'm doing it. But that's just my own personal take on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Some people think
When you
that
sing, you're
there's no
actively
difference.
participating in worship, not just.
But what I'm trying to say is this, and I didn't need to get into all that, but what I'm saying is this. We had so many different divisions, and I thought, I finally figured out after the first year I was there, I got to know everybody, I'm never going to fix all this if I was here the rest of my life. The best I can hope to do is to make things a little bit better on the day I leave than it was when I came. And so instead of working on fixing stuff, I worked on improving the communication between different groups. I want to say factions, but they really weren't that factions. I would encourage people to work together on certain things we had. They were big on Vacation Bible School. And I would encourage teachers, in fact, I got with my director of my Vacation Bible School, I would encourage teachers who kind of had a disagreement. They were friendly and everything, but kind of had a disagreement to work together. I thought if I can just improve the communication between these people, they will study and work and learn together. And it was a little bit better when I left. I did not fix everything.
Is the idea though that fixing is the way we're supposed to solve
I don't think so.
I don't either, because the Bible tells us to study, not to tell them what it is and convince them and indoctrinate them to the quotation right way because you know better than everybody else.
That's the problem. And that's in my first place where I preached, that was my problem. I know better than you people. And when I didn't go into that, in Kentucky, when I didn't go into that, I know better. I just simply said, this is the way I see it. And this is the way, please, if you see it a different way, come by the building. Or come by the office and we'll discuss it. And I said, I will listen to you. Didn't happen very often though. I mean, it was odd because people progressed on their own. That wasn't the only problem I had. It was, I don't want to say this because you're going to think of the wrong problem, but it wasn't that. Marriage, divorce, and remarriage. And it wasn't for what purpose the divorce was. We had this old hillbilly mountain man idea that it was okay to commit adultery if the wife was, how do I put this? Negligent about her duties as a wife, okay? But then, and I had one of our deacons actually saying in this discussion, well, if the wife won't go do this, she forces him to commit adultery. I said, no, she doesn't. Adultery is never not your fault. He said, well, this doesn't, and folks, I'm going to tell you, this man is dead now because he took his own life right after I moved here. he was married to a lady who was so OCD and bipolar. It was so hard. It was so hard. They finally divorced after several years of trying to work it out. And I know why. Okay. And I'm not gonna get into the whole thing, but you cannot look at sin and saying, you forced me to sin, so therefore I can. You know, he chose to marry this woman who will be faithful to her no matter what, no matter what happens.
Yeah, she has to knows.
Mm-hmm. And that's something, he said, well, what can I do? I said, you're going to have to work that out with your wife. I cannot. I'm not a married man. I was like, I do know this. If you commit adultery, that's you. That's not her. She has done nothing, but she's guilty of it. And that was one problem. And this, you would not believe. I see a little bit of it here, not near as much as among the hillbillies. This hillbilly mountain man, religion is for women and children, not for men, you know, this kind of thing. I'm a man, I'll do what I think is right, and this, that, and the other, and I'm gonna go to heaven if my kids are right. If my kids and my wife go. You know how many of these guys that I talk to? I mean, I refuse to talk to them around their stills, but I talk to them anywhere else. Now, folks, I talk to Hatfields and I talk to McCoys about the gospel. And it's still a thing. And there are feuds, and there are mountain men, and there are people. We had 2 members of our church who shot at each other over 6 inches of property, the property line. And they would come and talk to me about it, and there was nothing I could do about it except say this: 2 brothers in Christ ought to be able to work this out.
Well, each one of them take 3 inches, that way it's divided down the middle.
But Barry, you can't tell them that, because you cannot, I found this out early, you can't give them a solution. And the reason you can't give them a solution is one will like it, and if one likes it, the other's gonna hate it. They've got to come together and work out that 3 inches, even though you knew the best way to do it.
Jack London had built a fire.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the story when 2 guys feuded all their lives?
Mm-hmm.
At the very end, where I thought it was kind of ironic, at the very end, they said they were both frozen, or dying from frost. Hypothermia, excuse me. And they said, oh, yeah, we're going to be friends. Isn't it going to be funny people to see us in town walking and laughing together?
Mm-hmm.
And they said they heard the footsteps. They said, oh, that's the town men coming to rescue. It's the wolves.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Teach that story.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because remember they were mortal enemies for years and years and years, and then when they got put in the position where it's like, wait a minute, we got to work together to get ourselves out of this.
Mm-hmm.
How ironic is, like, you know, now death is here.
Well, these people knew, some of the old people knew John C. Hatfield and Susanna McCoy. There's a big Romeo and Juliet story. Susanna died. She got pregnant with Hatfield. Then Renell McCoy's daughter.
So I know, I'm familiar with it. They started over like an argument about pigs, or
Don't really know.
I think that's what it started over.
That
Somebody
is-
sold them,
That
and
is a rumor.
a rumor.
Yeah, and nobody really knows.
I think it started over land personally.
I think it started Civil War because they fought together, the Civil War, and Devil Lance Hatfield deserted from the Confederacy, and Renell McCoy stayed. And when they went back, Renell McCoy was always a little, after the war, when he went home, he was always a little jealous because there was no coal in those days. It was all timber. The Devil Lance had gotten back and had cornered the market on timber,
Yeah.
and Renell McCoy never did catch it. And the two, I think it was jealousy over that, and I think it was a little bit of upset about all the men that were killed because Devil Lance deserted the Confederate cause. So there's a lot of misinformation about it, but I'm telling you this, I had to learn about it when I was preaching there, because they would bring it up and I would have no idea what.
Oh yeah, it's a very serious.
Yeah,
My
it's-
uncle, I'll give you a good one. He was the sheriff of Evans County for years and years before he became sheriff. He was an EMT. You know, started off.
Mhm.
And the way he told the story, he wouldn't tell me what it was. He said that they drug this man out of the pond. He was already drinking. He fell out of the boat. They drug him out of the pond. He said they tried to resuscitate him while they was getting to the hospital. got him in, and the doctor came in here, literally, he said, lifted his arm up, it fell, lifted it up again, it fell, and the doctor's dead now. He said the doctor walked out there, you know, the family's in the waiting room. He said, rattled tip and said, he said, did all he could, but he died anyway. He said, there's people in that family will not speak to me to this day. And that's been 40 years. So he thought they let their daddy die. He said that he was drunk and fell out of a boat.
There's a legend, and I'll put on this. There's a legend of a feud with Hatfield McCoy. But a young man went out, he was recently married, less than a year, and they had the first child, she was pregnant. And he went out to defend his family's, you know, whatever.
Honor.
It wasn't an honor, it was just to defend your family. And he was killed. Everybody knew who killed him. Everybody knew which guy on the other side killed him. The sheriff comes up to this girl and says, who killed him? He said, you don't even know that. So what do you mean? She pointed to her stomach and said, he knows. 15 years later, that young man shot that man dead. And they hold a grudge forever.
See, I couldn't figure that out, because I'm just lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It takes too much energy to hate. What's the old saying? If revenge starts digging too great, one for yourself and one for your enemy.
I've had some stuff that's happened in the past few years. I can understand it. I dealt with it, but honestly, you know.
Well, I'll give you a good example. When my brother passed away, a good friend of mine, me and my wife were, they go to church, you know, not Central, what's the one on 17 miles, Parkway. Lovely, love her to death, just like she was my sister. First thing she said, she hugged me, you know, I'm sorry about your brother. Thank you, Lee, you know, I'm here for you and your mother. Thank you, that's what. Then she started talking about my ex-wife. Oh, she still calls me, wants to know how you doing. I said, Lee, how's your children doing? She's so, I hate to use the word manipulate. I can manipulate the conversation very easily.
I can promise you, there's some people in this world that will do something to someone you care about. You will never feel the same about that person. You gotta work on those you are.
My thing is, it's, to me, it's just my opinion, I'll put that out there. The opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. I've moved to the point where it's like, you know, what all she did to me, you know, run away with this guy she worked with, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's fine, it happened. It's like what the old saying about Brooks and Dunn. It's just whiskey under the bridge.
What's your invitation?
161.
161. All right, in a minute, we'll be singing this song, and if you stand in need, either here or listen later electronically, we come together, we stand, and that's what we sing.
Oh, do not let the world depart, and close thine eyes against the light. For sinner, harden not thy heart, be saved, oh, tonight. Oh, why not tonight, not tonight. Oh, why not tonight, will thou be saved, then why not tonight?
So pray. Almighty God, Father of all, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for your Bible. We thank you for your Son. Father, we ask your blessings upon us in our attempts to understand it, our attempts to talk it over and discuss it. Please continue to care for each and every one of us, Father. Dismiss us from this place, but never from thy presence. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right. Super Sunday was last weekend. The last day of the month is this Sunday, which is Halloween. And All Saints Day is Monday. I don't know what you want to do for that. But in our house, we don't do anything. But really kind of neat to see what you do. But Make sure. I don't think it's that big of a deal anymore. Let's see, is there anything else to talk about? Donna's not feeling well, I told you about that. Had that procedure yesterday, I hope it worked, I'm afraid it hadn't. And I had my COVID booster yesterday, so I had pretend COVID last night, to get my antibodies going. Turns out the vaccine I got wasn't worth nothing. I got Johnson & Johnson originally, and if you want a Moderna booster shot, you have to meet all these conditions. For Johnson & Johnson, it just has to be 2 months since you had it. You know, so what that tells me is it wasn't effective after 2 months. And so we all got as teachers, and then I told some teachers that day, said, ooh, I better get my shots. You ain't better CVS we gotta see. Anything we talk about? Okay, let's do something. Yeah, there we go.
I got something that I don't want it to be on the thing.
Well, considering nobody's here, and this is over almost now.
I just found out today, I went and had a